Greetings, family. This is Cassandra. So thank you for tuning in. If you are tuning in, it is Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I am again attempting to be a lot more disciplined about when I get on to read. So for those who have never tuned in, um, this book, The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth by Monica Zhu and Barbara Moore, is what I've been reading live online since February. And we are more than halfway through the book. We're on chapter 45. The last time I read was Friday, and we were halfway through chapter 45. So I'm going to pick up with the reading of chapter 45 today, which is called The Witch Hunt. So up until this point, this book, if you can tell, right, is very well tabbed, right, and very well written in. And the reason why is because the book is the game changer. You understand? I am enlisting the help of here in the next couple of weeks, enlisting the help of some young people to, kind of modernize my my setup, my online setup, because for me, I'm the teacher, right? And so I am not interested. I'm not going to. That's what the deal is. I'm not going to learn all new skills to, to modernize my, my social media visuals, if you will. I spent a lot of time last week trying to figure out, basic stuff like how to create reels, but I have so much in my head and I do so much studying outside of this process that is something that I will, hire and enlist young people to do for me. So with that being said, all I'm doing is teaching. All I'm doing is reading. The other disclaimer is this book in general, this chapter in particular is extremely triggering. It is extremely graphic. And the nature of this book is one that is challenging in a lot of ways. And so I have to be better about, telling people if they decide to listen to the read to, be objective and also be open to being uncomfortable. Because, see, the discomfort is where epiphany is, right? We've grown comfortable with our oppression. Hence, there is no epiphany in that. It is in the chaos where we find epiphany, you see. And so this book is the chaos. It is the challenge. Like this book, this is my fourth time reading the book, has challenged me in so many ways. It is responsible for so many evolutionary leaps forward in my own understanding and my own development. But that shit came in the form of gut punches and smacks across the head and shit. So that is what I'm telling you. I am reading. I'm not teaching yet. I will be teaching a workshop on this book in July. But right now we're just getting through the reading. So that once we start doing the workshop, people can just go back to that. If you are tuning in on YouTube, then you can go into the descriptions and see that there is a link to the PDF version of the book that you can read for free if you would like to read along and take notes. The book is really inexpensive, so I encourage you to buy it. But anyway, with that being said, I want to go ahead and start the reading for today. So as the title description, for those that are tuning in via YouTube, we are completing the chapter entitled The Witch Hunts. Devil projection and witch hunting are functional parts of patriarchy. They are essential tools of mass control via mass energy diversion. If life is born out of evil, as Christians believe, then devil paranoia is chronic to Christian life. If we look at Western Christian history through our pagan evolutionary glasses, we can see that demon projection and witch hunting has never really stopped. They are endemic to Western politics. One reason the Inquisition and witch burnings died down in Europe was that Christian European kings, governments, religious men, and male citizens had found new hunting grounds, new scapegoats. Around world had given them new worlds to conquer, with new heathens to convert, use, and destroy. Europe emerged from the Inquisition of its own peoples via the Inquisition of the Dark Others across oceans, i.e., imperialist colonialism. There were Black Africans to enslave on their own continent or dragged in chains to the American colonies, where there were also numerous indigenous tribes of, quote, pagan idolaters, the North, Central, and South American Indians, all of whom could be defined as mere animals, bestial demons, and spawns of the devil. Whatever it took to rationalize enslaving them, massacring them, ripping off and cannibalizing their lands, cultures, and life energies. Whenever we read the history of Western colonial imperialism during the 15th to 19th centuries, we should remember that the men, the political and religious institutions, and worldviews conducting it were the same as those who had conducted the Christian Inquisition and witch hunts for 5 solidly sadistic centuries. Christian men, in the name of Christ, enlarging their properties, their powers, and their pieties in the same bite. Witch hunting and devil projecting is in more or less subtle forms are classic patriarchal tools. They can be picked up and used anytime, anywhere to build the house of God, that exclusive clubhouse of ambitious men. In the past decade in America and throughout the world, there has been a resurgence of fundamentalist religious activity, or at least increased focus on it in the media. Fundamentalism in any Western religion, Christian, Judaic, Muslim, means a strict literalist interpretation of and obedience to the words of some ancient texts considered divinely inspired, coupled with a zealous desire to make the world correspond to these texts, i.e., God's word, God's law. In a mid-70s poll taken by one of the popular presses, 50% of the Americans interviewed agreed with the statement that all the world's troubles are caused by the devil. And in 1980, Americans installed a president who, in public statements, seems to be stating his belief that half the world, the other half, is composed of beings who intentionally will evil. With this upsurge of fundamentalist ontology has come increased media reports of satanic cults and sensationalized television dramas of such cults, and related ritual killings in America. Undoubtedly, there are satanic cults in the United States, composed of both silly and dangerous people. But it must be pointed out that there is no historic record of mass killings by Satanists anywhere. At any time. The world record for mass killings is held by Christians. Hundreds of millions of human beings in the past 2,000 years have been tortured and slaughtered in an infinite number of hideous ways in the name of Christ, and by people who believed or who said they believed that they were exterminating agents of the devil, Satan worshipers, dangerous idolaters. We have just talked about the first Holocaust, 300 years of witch burnings in Europe, and the second Holocaust of World War II, 5 million to 6 million Jews were exterminated, along with millions of other unclean subhumans, communists, feminists, gypsies, homosexuals, the physically and mentally handicapped in Europe, in Germany, Austria, and France. Although about 45 million people died in that war, including 22 million Russians and all the Japanese citizens who perished in the nuclear holocausts of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. World War II had several causes and secular triggers. But essentially, it was one more religious war. Come on now. It was one more religious war. Adolf Hitler, let's see, was born and bred a German Catholic. In 1941, he stated to one of his generals, Gerhard Engel, quote, "I am now, as before, a Catholic and always will remain so." Oh, end quote. In Mein Kampf, Hitler repeatedly states his conviction that he is working for God and Christ. Therefore, this is a quote, "Therefore, I am convinced that I am acting as the great agent of our Creator. By fighting off the Jews, I am doing the Lord's work," end quote. At a Nazi Christmas celebration in 1926, Hitler proclaimed, quote, "Christ was the greatest early fighter in the battle against the world enemy, the Jews. The women or any roles went outside of volunteer. He opposed experience never been satanic cults, or the world has been endangered and ravaged in historic times. Who managed to get large numbers of people to agree with him. In part, the holy war is devil projection." Come on. Is devil projection. The targeting of specific groups, heretics, witches, Jews, communists, feminists, homosexuals, subversives, as demonic, satanic agents, and the inflammatory insistence that God wills the exorcism or extermination of these devils by his chosen, quote, self-appointed holy men. Years or centuries of conflagration follow. The historic damage in the West being done not by devil worshippers, but by Christians ruled by their fear and hatred of the devil. We do not know how many people have died recently in America at the hands of satanic cults. In the past decade, there have been dozens of killings by Christians of other human beings believed to be, quote, possessed by the devil. Tragically, with few exceptions, the victims have all been little children, tortured and killed by their parents, relatives, or babysitters because these pitiful, Bible-obsessed adults believed the children had the devil in them. Doubtless, the mid-1970s success of the film The Exorcist and The Omen, in which the devil always sensationally picks children to inhabit, is related to this sad phenomenon. In 1976, a Christian fundamentalist sect was involved in the beating death of a 3-year-old boy whose parents were members of the sect. They were beating the devil out of the boy. In Philadelphia in 1979, a 3-month-old baby was thrown out of a second-story window by its aunt because she said, "The Lord told me to." In New York in 1980. So the reason these dates, for those who are just tuning in, is because this book was written in 1987. Okay, so that's why the dates are so old. Let's see. In Philadelphia, let's see. In New York in 1980, a 21-month-old boy was exorcised by his mother while 3 brothers watched. The infant was scalded in boiling water and then seared to death in an oven. The mother explained to the police that she had to get the devil out of her baby. In 1983, a 2.5-year-old Californian girl was held down by her father on a hot floor heater until the devil left her, she said. In 1984, in Bangor, Maine, a man killed his girlfriend's 4-year-old daughter by burning her in an electric oven. He claimed the child was Lucifer and he was performing an exorcism on her. In Austin, Texas, in 1980, a 21-year-old male was sleeping with his head against his truck window one night when his best friend drove up, saw his head, and blew his brains out with a deer rifle. The man with the gun had just been discussing Satan with his female companion, and he told police he had seen the devil in his sleeping friend's head. In Hampton, Virginia, in 1979, a mother cut off her own hand, the right hand of her cut off her own hand, the right hand of her 5-year-old daughter, and the left hand of her 7-month-old daughter, because she had been reading the Bible, thinking about John the Baptist getting beheaded. In a small Wisconsin town in February of 1985, a man calling himself Elijah shot and killed a priest and 2 church parishioners. He claimed he was following God's will and punishing these men for allowing a girl to read scriptures during Mass. In American Fork, Utah, in the winter of 1984, 2 brothers named Ron and Dan Lafferty entered by force the home of their sister-in-law, Brenda, the wife of a younger brother, Alan Lafferty. The 2 brothers were founders of the School of Prophets, a breakaway fundamentalist Mormon sect. A few years earlier, they had been excommunicated by the Mormon Church for their behavior and beliefs, which included a return to polygamy as a holy duty. The School of Prophets, citing Bible texts as support, claimed that wives were property given to men by God and meant to obey without question all instructions from their husbands. A woman who resisted her husband's wishes in any manner was a fornicator, and her children were, in the eyes of God and the Utah prophets, children of fornication. Brenda Lafferty had supported the wives of these 2 brothers in divorce suits following the men's return to holy polygamy. Ron and Dan Lafferty had also received a revelation that called for 6 mighty ones to battle for the Lord against Lucifer. The School of Prophets was born in this revelation, composed of 5 Lafferty brothers. But the sixth, Alan, was discouraged by his wife from having anything to do with the self-appointed prophets. She believed they were Satanists. When Lafferty brothers forced their way into Brenda's home while her husband was at work, they were acting according to another revelation. God had told them it was his will that these people be removed. Witnesses heard the men calling Brenda a bitch, a slut, and a liar. She fought back, kicked and screamed, and begged them not to harm her child who was in the crib. The 2 men stifled her with a pillow and tied a cord around her neck so that one brother could slit her throat. Then they held her head back to let the blood pour from her body as a proper biblical sacrifice. The murder knife was then handed to Dan Lafferty, who went to the crib where the 15-month-old baby girl Erica was crying, "Mommy, mommy." Dan Lafferty slit the baby's throat, telling people later, it wasn't no problem. I felt the spirit. It was with me, end quote. During his trial, Dan Lafferty acted as his own lawyer, admitted the killings freely, and defended himself entirely on the basis that the murders had been commanded by God. Quote, "The state has failed to prove that a crime has been committed," end quote, he told his jury. Quote, it could very well be fulfillment of the revelation of God, not a crime, end quote. Lafferty further testified, quote, "Consistent with the scripture, we are told that there are going to be some frightful circumstances when the Lord's kingdom is built up and the adversary's kingdom must be torn down. We are told that this will be a dreadful day. The proud will be destroyed and their children will be dashed before their eyes, and there will be no pity for the infant or the suckling. I don't intend to make excuses over things I have no control of. I'm not really sorry. I'm not in the position I am because I chose to be. We are involved in a day when the Lord has strange work to do," end quote. A Utah jury sentenced Dan Lafferty and his brother Ron to life imprisonment, but they were not able to refute the Lafferty's assertions that the Holy Bible supported their deeds. These are just a few news stories emerging from the past decade in America. All the murders and mutilations described were performed by people who saw themselves as holy men and handmaidens of the biblical God and the Christ and of Christ the Lord. They were all doing God's will, smiting devils, smiting whores and fornicators, and the children of fornicators. The full history of such holy murders in the West under Christianity and the influence of the biblical Old Testament would be much longer than this account and even more nauseating. The devil is the curse of those who have abandoned the goddess to do with witchcraft. Witchcraft, we should know by now, is the ancient European pagan religion going back to the hunting times and the Paleolithic caves. Its practitioners worship a female goddess and her consort, the horned one, who is represented with the goat hooves and the horns of the god Pan, meaning all, the fertility spirit of nature. Pan goes back to the shamanic figure in the Trois caves, the sorcerer dancing in animal mask and skins. This figure was interpreted by Christians as the devil, amalgamated with their concepts of the evil principle. But Pan represented life and life energy, not evil. The witches never worshipped evil, which is a Christian obsession. Evil. They worshipped as human beings worshipped at the beginning of time, the goddess, her nature, her fertility, her cyclic life and death cosmos. Satanism is a Christian heresy. You cannot believe in a Satan unless you believe in Christian ontology and the Bible. Come on. Satanism is of very recent origin. The first Black Mass conducted as a parody of the Catholic Mass was performed in the late 17th century at the court of Louis XIV. It was performed by 50 to 60 Roman Catholic priests hired by the king, who conducted Mass on a naked girl's belly as an amatory lark to amuse the court. The Satanic Black Mass, dedicated to Antichrist and designed to worship and invoke the principle of evil, does not appear in history until the 19th century. It was basically a literary invention and an amusement of decadent aristocrats and artists, and from this comes our idea of Satanism. That is the end of chapter 45, called The Witch Hunts. So we will go on to read a little bit of chapter 46, and then I will end for the day. Chapter 46, the denial of the mother, denial of the people. Christianity offered redemption through a single being of the male sex. Christ must redeem us from being born out of a woman. His power to do so comes from the fact that he is the son of a male God. At death, Christ does not return to the Mother Earth like earlier vegetation deities to renew and fructify us all. Christ is a vegetation deity who refuses to be recycled. Oh my God. Who refuses to be recycled, baby. Oh my God. Hold on. Let me highlight that shit real quick. Come on. We get into the meat of all contradictions right here, okay? He is a vegetation deity who refuses to be recycled. Okay? Instead, he ascends to heaven to sit as a judge at his Father's side. In the Gospel of Thomas, the following exchange occurs in the presence of Mary Magdalene. Simon, Peter said to them, "Let Mary leave us, for women are not worthy of life." Okay? Jesus said, "I myself shall lead her in order to make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit resembling you male. For every woman who will make herself male will enter into the kingdom of heaven." Simon was the founder of the Christian church among the Jews and the spokesman of the apostles. And lucky for him that women are women. The great domed cathedral of St. Peter's in Rome was built with brothel taxes. Oh my God. Yo, it said, thank God women are women, because the St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome couldn't have been built without women popping coochie. Just saying. That's what paid to build the cathedral. Taxing women. Anyway, Once and for all, Christ signified the end of rebirth through the mother. He denies his mother. He denies his mother. Quote, "Woman, what have I to do with thee?" End quote. John 2:4. Nothing, apparently. Now men must be reborn through a male mother, Christ, and women must be reborn male to even be considered worthy of life. To be wholly honest, Christ should have said, quote, "I have come to destroy the mother and go about my father's business." Come on. Go about my father's business, baby. In apocryphal text, Jesus does say, "For I have come to destroy the works of the female." Okay. Oh my God. "For I have come to destroy the works of the female. Death will prevail as long as you women bear children." Such a nihilistic denial of the value of earthly life, coupled with the Christian church's imperialistic urge to control that life, specifically to control women's reproduction of that life, has contributed greatly to the biophobic insanity of the past 2,000 years of human existence. Come on. Yee, biophobia, baby. That's some real shit right now that we must get into later, but it's one we must get into. For the past 2,000 years of human existence, in the past 4,000 years of patriarchy, there have been about 300 years of comparative peace. Under Christ, the so-called Prince of Peace, the Western world has been in continuous war with its enemies and with itself. From Christendom have come doctrines of despair and alienation, theories of master races and inferior blood, a daily reduction of life to stupid mechanism, grotesque paranoias about the unconscious, a hatred and fear of the world and all things in it as inherently evil. Most of all, Christianity has fueled men's hatred and fear of women as being the givers of this miserable and treacherous existence. Come on. Woo! Come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on. This is the crux of all things, people. How could our ancestors have survived and evolved through more than 500,000 years of human life on Earth if they had experienced life in such a consistently ugly way? Human beings are bound to each other through the mother. As her children, we share a blood bond with all creation. We're all made the same from her flesh, her desire, her dreams. Under patriarchy, this mystical blood bond is broken. Our flesh bond becomes the source of all evil. Under Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and state communism, baby, come on. State communism, the four major Western patriarchal religions, the compulsion to control or destroy the flesh of the other has been historically stronger than the stated desire of, quote, brotherhood. This perpetual success of war and failure of peace is then said to be the human condition, but it is only the condition of humans under patriarchy. Come on. Under patriarchy, there is a literal belief that all of life is created for men to use. And what patriarchal men see as usable is also seen as contemptible. We suggest that the atomic or nuclear blast is man's final identification with the sun god, the final annihilation of matter, mother. And this is the implicit goal of all patriarchal religion. If they cannot control life utterly, they will choose to destroy it. The nuclear technician is the ultimate priest of the Father. Ha! Handing us his unholy mushrooms of rigid and uncreative death, a ceremonial sacrifice of mere objective numbers without grace, hope, rebirth, or magic immortality. Exclusive identification with the father is a way of denying dependence on the mother, who is always utterly Mother Earth, ultimately Mother Earth. Taking is a denial of dependence and also transforms the guilt of indebtedness into aggression. Woo! Oh my God. Ha! Oh my God. Y'all are not hearing? Oh. Yo, taking is a denial of dependence on the mother and also transforms the guilt of indebtedness into aggression. The masculinity complex, the obsessive denial of femaleness is inherently nihilistic and aggressive because the Christian church relentlessly uses words like pious and humble and meek to describe the character of Christ. Such words have masked the actual historical aggressiveness of the church against human bodies and minds. In fact, the Eastern Orthodox Christ Pantocrator was always pictured as a quite fierce and demanding, But throughout the Christian empire, concepts of humility and meekness have been systematically used for centuries to condition submissiveness in the masses, while the ruling elites quite arrogantly and aggressively grabbed the earth's treasures for themselves. As John G. Jackson writes, quote, "The story of the Dark Ages in Europe presents a chronicle of horrors almost without a parallel in human history. And the saddest part of this story, of the story of the conversion of Europe to Christianity, The story of the Dark Ages in Europe presents a chronicle of horror almost without parallel in human history. And the saddest part of it is the story of the conversion of Europe to Christianity." He quotes Briffault by saying, quote, "Could the full history of the conversion of Europe to Christianity be written, it would present a tale of horror more appalling than that of the Christianization of Spain by the Inquisition. The Christian religion has been imposed upon the people of Europe in much the same manner as it was imposed on Mexico and Peru, in the course of whose conversion Las estimates 12 million people perished, butchered, burnt alive, and tortured," end quote. Oh my God. Oh my God. Whew, we don't want to do it, yo. We don't want to do it. Oh my God. Anyway, those who survived the butchery of Christian conversion were enslaved. As Jackson writes again, quote, "The church not only perpetrated slavery, but created it where it had never existed under Roman law. Bishop Ratharius of Verona in the 10th century went so far as to say, quote, 'God has mercifully destined those to slavery for whom he saw that freedom was not fitting.'" End quote. The medieval and Renaissance church fathers of Europe saw the institutions of private property, of coercive government, of class systems, even of slavery, as not only inevitable on this evil earth, but desirable. They were order-imposing, elite-enforced remedies for the corruption of human nature. The scholastic minds of the church and its pastoric theory made a distinction between the state of nature, based on natural law and expressing God's ideal, a world more responsive to natural order, which patriarchy, of course, destroyed, and the conventional state, which is the real world, the rationalized world, sanctioned by custom. Okay? According to God's apologists, this conditional state is not the original intention of God, but has come about through human sin as a result of the fall. Thus, the unnaturalness and exploitive coerciveness of the real world is blamed on human beings, few noting that this state of things was originally established to enforce God's will over human beings. The Christian or biblical God is never blamed for worldly disorder, or disorder. His absolute will is just used to sanction its continuance. Come on. Ha. Corrupted by original sin, human nature supposedly demanded restraints which could not be found in an egalitarian order. These restraints are inequalities of wealth, status, and power, and the consequent right of a select few to rule over the many. Such restraints were interpreted as not only the consequences of sin, but also its remedy. Oh my God. Also its remedy. You see, we are exploited, punished, and oppressed for our own good, so we are told by God's professional explainers. No matter how brutal, unjust, or greedy patriarchal institutions might be, they are to be understood as the whips of God on the disobedient bottoms of his mortal children. With such fiendish reasoning did the church fathers build their Christian empire. Throughout the early years of Christianized Europe, the priests and the scholists were the only people doing such reasoning. They were the only people allowed an education. The great masses of people, with their pagan Neolithic knowledge destroyed or forbidden, were kept in profound ignorance. The church worked to ensure their minds were filled up only with Christian dogma, guilt and fear, and devil superstition. When we consider that the megalithic lunar and solar observatory builders of England and the Breton coast of France were, circa 3,500 to 2,500 BC, measuring the slight periodic 0.15 degree oscillation of the moon, as well as building immense and beautiful earthworks for ritual celebration, the intellectual and cultural squalor of Europeans under the domination of the Christian church becomes truly appalling, though not unfortunately unique. The same mental and physical impoverishment followed the church wherever it went. As John G. Jackson points out, Europe might still be in mental darkness were it not for the periodic injections fought tooth and nail by the church of Arabic brilliance. Europe, says Jackson, was saved from its abysmal Christian engineered dark ages, not through a Greco-Roman Renaissance, but by the entrance of Moors into Spain and the influence of Moorish civilization into the Mediterranean and Southern Europe. He quotes Joseph Maccabee, quote, "None of our modern sophistry redeems the squalor of Europe from the 5th to the 11th century. And it was again the dark-skinned men of the South who restored civilization. By the year 1000, Europe was reduced to a condition which, if we were not Europeans, we should frankly call barbarism. Yet at that time, the Arabs held a splendid civilization in Spain, Sicily, Syria, Egypt, and Persia, and it linked on to those of India and China. We write manuals of the history of Europe or of the Middle Ages, and we confine ourselves to a small, squalid area and ignore the brilliant civilization that ran from Portugal to the China Sea." End quote. The Christian church initially tried to fight the threat of this civilizing Arabic brilliance by launching the Holy Crusades against it. But too many crusaders returned to Europe trailing clouds of sensual glory from the heathen lands, and from them created the splendidly iridescent troubadour culture of southern France. As we've seen, the Catholic Church launched the Inquisition against heretics in 1200 by destroying these lyric Arabic influences, and for the next 500 years, the Inquisition and the witch hunts were Christian imperial machines designed to capture every possible bit of exotic or pagan intelligence in trials and torture chambers and burn it all down to gray ash, i.e., the church maintained control. Oh my God. The church maintained control of Europe via 1,000 years of institutionalized propaganda and terror, in which the mind of Europe was kept in darkness while all outside light was forbidden to shine in. Whew. Come on. Almost all Christian charity has been motivated by spiritual self-interest. Y'all ain't heard. Almost all Christian charity has been motivated by spiritual self-interest, baby. The church could piously recommend that well-off individuals help the poor, not for the sake of the poor, who after all deserved their poverty, but to help good Christians make points in heaven. Overall, the church has maintained that the order of society is as it should be. The power of God has been used throughout Christian history to uphold the secular status quo. This is the cruelly reactionary role played by the great imperialist church. It promises the people it will exploit and deceive them. And when the people suffer, the church is it on their sin. Christianity's labor record is equally atrocious. It saw hard, unrelieved labor and class inequity as fitting punishments for human sin and necessary disciplines for innate human rebelliousness. So the church always historically and ideologically aligned itself with the boss against the workers. Come on, y'all, socialists who are so dogmatically detached from understanding the spiritual implications of history in political life. Come on. As Foucault writes, the 30 Years' War in Europe caused great social upheaval and economic depression. There were 3 large uprisings in France between 1621 and 1639. Central to these uprisings were labor protests, new economic structures, the centralizing of capital in urban centers, and development of larger and larger manufactories. We're breaking the power of the medieval craft skills and assaulting workers' rights. The French general regulations were government orders prohibiting all assemblies, leagues, or associations of workers. When some French parliaments, such as that of Normandy, were reluctant or refused to prosecute guild members for political protest, the church, in its characteristic way, stepped in on the side of repression. Shh. Come on. The church intervened and accused the workers' secret gatherings of sorcery. A decree of the Sorbonne in 1655 proclaimed guilty of sacrilege and mortal sin all those who were found in such bad company, end quote. The church up to the 16th century was the Catholic Church. Its expressive corruptions and repressions provoked the rise of Protestant Reformation. But it's hard to see how people benefited in any way from the appearance of one more father church. Come on. Whew. Child, I know. Some of you non-denominational, ultra-progressive Christians about to be bothered, hot and bothered. You understand? Some of you supporters of the good old Southern Baptist Church and the Independent Fundamentalist Church about to be all hot up under the collar. But this is the truth. Okay? Listen. The church up till the 16th century was the Catholic Church. Its excessive corruptions and repressions provoked the rise of the Protestant Reformation. But it's hard to see how any people benefited in any way from the appearance of one more father church. Luther not only fought the papacy. During the time of the peasant revolt of 1500, Luther wrote furious pamphlets calling for the punishment of thieving, murderous gangs of peasants, and 100,000 peasants were slaughtered because of it. Nor did all those peasants forced into the cities, into impoverished urban labor forces, fare any better under reformist Christianity, which was even more puritanical in its view of human labor as God's discipline, as God's punishment for the sin of being born. The peasants and the laborers were the people, and Christianity has always feared the people unless they were kept under strict physical, mental, and economic control. Ha! The Black Death swept through Europe in 1348. It can be seen as a psychosomatic destruction of the body resulting from the intense institutional hatred of the flesh ruling everywhere. Oh my God. Oh. But when the people moved to save themselves, to become healthy and free, to revolt, the church state was quick and ready to crush their revolt as satanic. The continuous paranoid repression of human sexuality and creative psychic capacities led to generation after generation of bizarre social phenomena like the dancing sickness, in which hundreds of people danced themselves to death. Thank you to everyone that is tuning in. For those that are tuning in late, I am reading from the great, wonderful prophetic works of Monica Zhu and Barbara Moore, both of whom are deceased, The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth. We are on chapter 45, which is entitled The Witch Hunts, for those who want to, read along. Under the feudal system, the peasants had a certain sense of security along with their oppression. They still lived in communal villages and retained ancient pagan customs and ritual traditions. When this system began to break down with the rise of the centralized church court, the peasants experienced large-scale famine, wars, poverty, uprootedness, and psychic disorientation. Europe was consumed by the belief in Satan and his black hosts, the demonic scapegoats for a rotten social and economic system. Come on. Make it plain. Europe was consumed by a belief in Satan and his black hosts as demonic scapegoats for a very rotten social and economic system populated by a repressed and fearful humanity. During feudal times, with secular power divided among feudal lords, as we've said, the church had never felt strong enough to move against the people, especially the country peasants or their native pagan religion. But with growing consolidation of religious royal power within urbanized centers, the church became politically unchallenged. It aligned immediately with the kings against the people. At no time did it even consider aligning with the people. Instead, it quickly moved to secure its power through the forceful elimination of all rival religious beliefs. Okay, this is why pagan religion survived through at least 1,000 years of Christian rule in Europe. Power rested in the countryside. Whoo, child. There's a word today, okay? Don't just listen to what I am reading. Feel what I am saying. This is a word today, okay? The reason. This is why pagan religion survived for 1,000 years through Christian rule in Europe. Power rested in the countryside. Missionaries were counseled by the Roman Pope to accommodate pagan religion where it could not be overcome. Thus, there are Christian churches throughout Europe built on the sites of pagan temples, and both pagan and Christian deities are pictured in many early European church reliefs. The naked goddess with her legs spread wide open to show the origins of life, adorns the lintels of church doors, even nunneries in many parts of Celtic Britain, particularly in Ireland, where she is called Shilana-Gig. And in the same way, Christian symbols were incorporated into pagan festivals. Christmas is the winter solstice celebration, and it is also the Roman Saturnalia. Saturnalia. The tree and gift exchange are pagan customs originating in goddess rituals. Santa Claus originated in Siberia in a Norse. Santa Claus originated in Siberia in a Norse goddess named Hertha or Nerthus. The Scandinavian Yule season or Jule season or Yule in Saxon originally celebrated the winter solstice as the wheel of the year, the sun rolling back from its furthest most point. Yule means wheel in Swedish. Easter is the pagan festival of spring, the year's rebirth or reconstruction. The name comes from the Saxon goddess of spring, Austria, who also gives her name to the female estrus cycle. Her name is cognate with Neolithic Near Eastern goddess Astarte, Ishtar, and Ashtoreth. The Near Eastern rabbits, the colored eggs hidden around in the grass or rolled down Balan, are fertility symbols of the goddess. Finally, the golden number used to calculate the movable feast of Easter is based on lunar calculations and on the 1919-18 year eclipse cycle used by the Druids and earlier megalithic builders. The same number was once used to calculate the date of Christmas in relation to the winter solstice. Christian missionaries, when they could, forbade the country people to worship their natural trees, springs, caves, and sacred stones. But they had at first no real power to enforce these taboos. And the peasants, good-naturedly included some Christian reference in their own pagan ceremonies, which they continued to practice. Pagan people worldwide tend to be spiritually inclusive, not fanatic. And after all, European pagans already worshiped the Great Mother and her magic child. Christianity could incorporate itself into this worship without much trouble in its early days. For many centuries, it had no other choice. But with the breakdown of the feudal system, largely through the church's ploy of sending feudal lords to fight and die in the Crusades far away in the Holy Land, while the church was busy scheming to gain control of their homelands in Europe, the power shifted from decentralized rural feudal to centralized city court. Oh my God. Come on. Ooh, child. Okay. Let's see. So with the feudal lords far away fighting in the Crusades to secure the Holy Land or whatever, the church was busy scheming to gain control of their homelands in Europe. The power shifted from decentralized rural feudal to centralized city court. Feudal lords were bankrupted by the Crusades. And they returned to find urban loan sharks at their castle gates. They were unable to resist the rise of kings, their courts upheld by Rome and its priests. In the 13th and 14th centuries, the church began to gather the kind of total secularly armed power that would allow it, a couple of centuries later, to burn a significant percentage of the European population out of existence. Along with its ancient witch knowledge inherited by the Paleolithic caves. In these brutal and transitional centuries, there appeared many messianic millennial movements among the people. Though they were loosely clothed in Christian-sounding doctrine and apocalyptic imagery, the populist nature of such movements made them anathema to the church, which condemned them as satanic. Many other movements were restless with resurgent pagan energy. They were many links, practical and symbolic, between the witches, the Knights Templar, the Gnostics, the Kabbalists, and the Flagellants, and the earlier Crusades of the poor. These crusades were revolutions in embryo, striking terror into the hearts of the rich and the privileged, whose castles and mansions were frequently burned and sacked. There were ranters and diggers and Catharites who were among the first to be burnt for heresy. There were the Begards and the Beguines, the brethren and the sisterns of free spirits, women and men who advocated communal living and property and voluntary poverty. Beguine women refused to marry, claiming freedom of sexuality and spirit as their divine right. Communities of Beguine women could be found throughout 12th century Europe, and many women, artists, thinkers, and mystics were associated with them. Those women's cities, the largest of them located in Flanders, were self-supporting. They developed crafts and educated girl children. Nominally Christian, the Beguine women's communities refused to bow to church authority and were initially punished for their successful independence by heavy taxation and the breakup of their economies. Many Beguines, women and men, were bisexual. Our word buggering for male homosexuality comes from these buggers and Begards who lived in the days before standardized dictionaries, feeling themselves to be the cosmic children of a divine parent, not a punitive father, even believing they could be living gods. The Begards and Beguines claimed to know nothing of mine and thine except the mutual ecstasy of being alive within the divine universe. Not surprisingly, they too were burnt. There are also widespread beliefs in the coming of a female Messiah. Y'all aren't here. Just y'all ain't here. Listen, there were also in Europe widespread beliefs of a coming of a female Messiah. Probably this is why Joan of Arc was eliminated as a secular and divine ritual of the church, the secular and divine rival of the church. She was a favorite of the people. Most of these groups and movements were wiped out by the Inquisition or driven so far underground that they gave up remembrance of their beliefs and customs. But their psychic heirs continue to spring up everywhere and always, even to this day. Significantly, they always spring up among the people. Oh my God. Significantly, they always spring up among the people, baby. Among the poor, the young, the outcast, the women, the mad, the artists. Oh my God. And they are always seen as a threat to the established patriarchal order. Rightly so. They are the children of the Great Mother struggling to regroup. Woo! Oh my God. Listen, I'm in there today. I'm at an hour. I think it is so fitting that I end there today. Listen, if you don't know, now you know. Hey, if you don't know, now you know. We will pick up on Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for the continuation of the reading of chapter 46 of this wonderful dynamic work of art and prophecy called The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth by Monica Zhu and Barbara Moore, baby. Yes, the chapter is chapter 46. which is entitled Denial of the Mother, Denial of the People. So we will continue again on Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. In the meantime, I'll probably be doing some updates on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Iyapo Moyende and Gina. It will be changing soon because I have gone back to using the name of my birth, which is Cassandra-Floyd. Iyapo Moyende and Gina served me, right, for this period. This is my evolutionary leap forward to go back to the name that my mother gave me when, you know, she suffered to have me. So soon, and I will keep you posted, I will be changing my YouTube channel name and all of my social media and everything back to Cassandra-Floyd. But in the meantime, you can go to Iyapo Moyende. That's IYAPO MOYENDE NGINA, Iyapo Moyende and Gina on YouTube to catch up with the reading of the Great Cosmic Mother. We are on chapter 46. There are 52 chapters in the book. So you can go back, listen to those while you're driving or washing dishes or whatever. Also in there, you can Google it. For those who are on Instagram, all you got to do is Google the Great Cosmic Mother PDF. You can read the book for free online. My suggestion is either print it out or just go ahead and buy the damn book, because you're going to need it if you're serious about walking with me through human history and how to recreate the future. That's all this is about. I'm not reading this book from a pleasure. I'm not reading this book because I have so much leisure time. I am reading this book because everything that we are engaged in right now is creating the new world. Is right now. Every word we say, every act we participate in, every deed we do is creating the new world. And what are we creating? That's the question. In this moment, in this period, in this time, with what I say and how I behave and how I present in the world and how I treat others, what is the world that I am creating right now in this moment? This is the only way to deconstruct this shit, because there is no amount of wars. There are no amount of rebellions. There are no amount of, quote, armed struggles. I'm trying to tell you, I was a hardcore revolutionary, and I am telling you, there is not any amount of armed struggles that we can engage in, rebellions that we can engage in, that is going to dismantle the quagmire that we are in, baby. So we have to be getting up in this shit. We have to be getting up into the secrets. We have to be getting up into the mysteries. We have to deconstruct this shit from beginning to end. And for us to have our starting point at just a couple of 100 years ago is problematic. That's what I'm telling you. That's what this book is helping me to understand the fourth time that I've read it. This book, among all others, I've read a lot of books that I herald as great, wonderful, prophetic works. But baby, this shit right here is the game changer. It is the bridger of all contradictions, the revealer of the origin of those contradictions. It is the great demystifier, baby. It is the great demystifier, this book here. It is, to me, the evidence of the ability of channeling, regardless of who you are and where you come from and what your social circumstances are. I rejected reading the book when I first got it. I was like, I ain't interested in reading nothing these white women got to say. They can't possibly tell me about who I am as an African in the world, you know, having been the descendants of enslaved Africans and shit. What can a woman from Sweden and a white woman from Northern California teach me about the history of the world and my place in it? And I'm trying to tell you, I rejected for a long time. A homegirl tried to put me on a minute ago. And I was like, this sounds like some woo-woo, you understand? This sounds like something that ain't got shit to do with me, you understand? And I rejected this book for a long time. And then when I sat with this book, I have read this book from cover to cover 4 times. And I am telling you, if you can get out of your way, if you can sit with your discomfort, because it's uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable read. If you are genuinely interested in the evolution of who you are, if you are genuinely interested in deconstructing the fucking cancer that has plagued your goddamn consciousness and kept you away from source, kept you away from the possibility of true happiness. Like, it is real. It can be real, right? Baby, you have to get comfortable. That's what this whole period is about. Here we are, 3 months into a Pluto returns in America. Here we are. Confront Saturn just went goddamn retrograde last week. This motherfucker about to be retrograde for 6 months. In a Pluto return in the United States of America. Honey, this whole period, this next 2 years is nothing but about shadow work. And if you can't get comfortable, if you cannot sit with that shit that is the most uncomfortable, that is the most, it is the thing that is begging resolution. It's begging resolution. And that resolution can only come one or two ways, you see. So that's what I really want to say about this book. I have encouraged so many people over the years to read the book. They have all had the same response that I had in the beginning. I ain't interested in reading that shit. Like, what's that got to do with me? And then they read it and they're like, oh my God. Oh my God, this book has actually changed. I felt myself evolve when reading this book. I'm just trying to tell you. So thank you again for those who tuned in. Please go to my YouTube channel, like, subscribe, and share. Go into the description so that you can download the book and follow along as I read. Take notes because you will need to. I'm telling you, it will change your life. It will change you. It will change you. This is not about information consumption or none of that shit. This is about evolutionary growth, baby. This is about evolutionary leaps forward. So if you ain't ready for that, then it don't apply to you. No harm, no foul. But baby, if you're talking about changing the world, if you are talking about deconstructing the quagmire that we are all afflicted by, you better get in this work. You better get in this work because I'm not doing this for me. I'm sitting here reading live to 2 or 3 people every night, but I know what it's about. And I have to trust that. I have to trust that even though there are 10,000 things that I could be doing with my time for an hour each day, sometimes 2, if spirit moves me, that this is going to touch someone. I've been getting emails from people in South Africa and goddamn New Zealand about the reading of this book. Even women who have read the book are like, oh my God, when I heard you read it, I heard something else than what I read. I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you, get in this work. If you're really trying to set this shit off, get in this work. It's a starting point. I'm not saying it's the answer, but I'm saying to be well informed about what it is that we are engaging in and what it is we are being called to do, we have to have a better analysis than the one that's been handed to us perpetually. And I'm talking about all of us, baby. We all been handed, force-fed, spoon-fed the analysis. Even the so-called revolutionaries, even so-called nationalists, whether you want to accept it or not, baby, you've been handed your narrative. You've been spoon-fed your narrative about the origin of your issue. You've been given an analysis about your place in the world, baby. I'm trying to tell you. And so we have to develop an analysis about why we are where we are and the role that each one of us must play to transform it. That is everyone. That is Black folks, brown folks, red folks, yellow folks, other folks, LGBTQIA, white people. We all have a role to play, baby. That's what I mean by uncomfortable. As a self-proclaimed nationalist that I was, this book was wildly uncomfortable for me to read and accept. That's why shit's still coming through. As I'm deconstructing layers of bullshit, it opens up the way for more epiphany to come to me. I'm taking notes in this book every time I read to you guys, as if the book ain't well read. Look at all these tabs over the years, all these motherfucking notes and shit over the years. And every time I read it, some other institution that has been constructed in my brain, in my consciousness, in my spirit, in my flesh, falls the fuck off, allowing more to come to me, more epiphany to come to me. But I had to be open to receive that. I couldn't go into the book saying, I already know everything that there is to know about the nature of all things on earth, all contradictions and shit. And so this book can't really teach me nothing. I could not go into the book that way. I had to go into the book as a student, willing and open to the idea, just like I was at 24 years old and I joined the movement, willing and open to the idea and the possibility and the very uneasy reality that everything I knew up until that point has been a lie or a misconfiguring of the truth. That's the period is calling on that, for us to relinquish our institutions. You understand? For us to be brave enough, baby, to be willing to part with that cannot serve us in the future, whatever that is, baby. Whether that is your ideas, whether that is your religion, whether that is your tradition, whether that is your culture, whether that is your belief, whether that is your nationalism, honey, we have to be ready. Don't mean it has to happen, but we have to be open to the possibility that it will. And the only thing that can come with a resolution met is evolution. No steps backward. The only thing that can happen when a resolution is finally met, baby, that is begging to be resolved, begging to be resolved. The only thing that can happen is forward motion, baby. The only thing that can happen is evolution. That's it. That's all. So that's my diatribe. I'm going to just tell you one more time. The book that is the new Bible, baby, is The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth by Monica Zhu and Barbara Moore. Written in 1987, reads like it could have been written yesterday, about today. You understand? Get in the book, download it, go to my YouTube page, make sure you share, especially this chapter on witch hunts. To me, it's the most uncomfortable chapter because we have an idealized, incorrect, inhumane understanding of Europe and the descendants of Europe. I'm sorry. Our nationalism requires it. It does. I get it. You understand? Our nationalism requires us to believe that white people are the devil, that white people are the ultimate bad guys in human history and shit. I get it. I understand. I understand, baby. I understand. But to know the history of Europe and it being the starting place, the not even the starting, let me backtrack. It being at least the seed of this most recent personification of the face of patriarchy, because patriarchy was emerging every motherfucking where. You understand? Yeah. So I'm gonna go, but I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Go to my YouTube page, Yapo and Gina, Yapo Mwede and Gina, and I will see you again at Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.